Hey everybody, just doing a little bit of a table update. My Brits are coming along quite well, my regulars for French Indian War. They may, if you just look at a glance at the video section, not look that much different because I did have the yellow and the red on last time, I believe, on the last video. But what I have done since then is I have both highlighted cleaned up the yellow and the red after the initial base painting, and then I've highlighted the red and now highlighted the yellow, and then I've also painted the hair and cleaned up the faces, and I painted the eyeballs. And so it's a lot of stuff that, unless I was in close, it's kind of hard to see, and I am going to go close in a little bit in a moment here, or right now. But I'm really quite happy with the way they're shaping up. There's glaring thing that I haven't done yet, and as I've not done the white detailing on the uniform, the pinstriping, I'll call it, the uniform details. And I've also not, there's a lot of details I've not done yet, and I have not cleaned up the white, like around the legs and things like that. One of the main reasons is I'm going to clean up the white and do the detailing at the same time. I really didn't want to do my primary highlighting of the yellows and the reds after doing a lot of the detailed white stuff, because it's just going to get on there. It's just going to be a lot more difficult. It's easier for me to fix a detail mistake on something I've already highlighted than to actually try to actually emulate the white on the uniform over something that I've messed up, at least in my experience. And so so I've got these brightened up and cleaned up really nicely, I think, for the main two colors, the yellow and the red. And so next we'll be working on the white and on some of the details. I've also done no washes at this point, and so I'll be doing some shading and some washes. I usually use for the whites a light gray wash. It's the Model Wash by Vallejo. I find it works really nicely to keep it white but also add some depth, and so that's what I'll likely be using. I still have to do the trim on the hats, the trim on the uniforms, but I've also painted the guns, and I don't know if I mentioned that. And so, quite happy with the way they're coming along. They're starting to look like a nice block that I'll have there for sharps practice. I will have to add another 13 to this, and I'd have to do some artillery as well. So while I was taking a little bit of a break in between stages from this, I started messing around with my coach again. And so I wanted to show just what I've done in that since the last video. One of the things that I initially did, because I was kind of wrapping my head around this a bit, and that was part of my my work here, was just to see a little bit how I was going to do this. I'm just going to put these figs aside for a second. And what I realized, I always initially, I picked up two of these actually. They're not really strong. They're kind of flimsy, so they are something you have to be a little bit careful with when using. But which they're plastic too, right? And I think that's part of it. And so one of the wheels I have to straighten out a bit on the other one I got, and I wasn't really thinking about doing a second one at this time, but I always planned on actually using two horses, probably extended out a little bit more for each coach, to have a coach with two horses. But when I was looking at the figures and I was looking at the horses and the coach, I kind of realized this needs to be, in my mind, a 4-horse coach. It's actually quite a bit bigger than I initially imagined or envisioned when I was planning this. And one of the ways you could see that is if I actually put this guy in here, or on here I should say, he doesn't sit there very well. I will have to glue him on, but if you actually see, he's actually quite small on this, and it's a fairly sizable coach in a lot of ways. They're kind of all come in all sizes at that time, and you can get everything from open top 2-seaters with just a 1 horse to much larger things. But 2 of these riders actually fit very comfortably on here, as you can see. And so I kind of had to readjust my thinking a little bit on this And so I ended up going for a four-horse coach with the 2 drivers on the top, mainly just to have 2 drivers on the front seat. I could always get more of these if I want to do a second coach, but I figure I might as well do this one the way I want it to first, rather than try to prepare for 2 coaches and not have the materials the way I want them to. And so what I'm also going to do is have this guy, who's actually, I got 2 horse holders, like he's a horse holder. He's got the kind of whip, like, actually in his arm there, but I'm just going to actually have him riding on the back, and I'll show how I'm going to do that. But I'm going to have him standing on this platform I built on the back. Now, before I go to the interior of the coach, it's not that much to show, but I'm going to show, I did do a couple of things to get this started. I was looking at pictures, and I did know that I'm going to need to do some things with reins and barding on my own. Like the horses have barding on them, but I'm going to need to create some barding and reins and straps that go to the coach and from the driver, one of the drivers at least, to the horses. And so I just created a real bare bones thing to start, and that is, I noticed that on these coaches they usually have 2 pieces that didn't come on this cake topper that will actually, you can have your barding attached to. And so I've actually made those just out of wood sticks, and I will model some barding eventually to those that go to the horses. As well, I created this little platform here, which is just going to be a spot where normally it was just an axle, but it's just a spot where the gentleman can stand on the back. And it's plenty big enough, because these characters, just based on the size, it's actually more than a foot length of a foot length deep. And so I'm just going to have him grabbing on. I was thinking whether I'd kind of sculpt a little handle or what, but I'll figure that out. I'm not really sure how he's going to grab onto this. I might have like a little handle or something that was made. Now, one of the main things I knew I was going to need to do is actually, this was clear if you watched the last video, or I should say it was hollow. It was just a decorative element on the top and you could see inside. So I actually just took a piece of plastic card and just put that in the top. And so when I paint it, it'll just be a proper roof with just the decorative elements, fancy elements on the top. Then inside, I'm not sure at this point I'm actually going to have riders. I don't have like a rider at this moment. I could get some, but I think I'm just going to have it empty, when they're just driving it to pick someone up or so. I'm just going to have it empty at this point. But I did create some benches inside just to see how that would work, and just fix some wood that would just simulate as benches inside. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I think I'll be doing the barding afterwards. Like, I'm probably going to be painting the horses individually and the miniatures individually, and then the coach individually. And I think I'll start with the coach. I'm going to paint it and get the ground texture the way I want it, but I'll likely use the horses to affix an area within it, the skull within the putty, so I can actually put them in later. And I'm going to start and just paint the coach first, and then I will work on the miniatures to go on the coach, and then I'll work on all the trappings after that for the barding and the reins and things like that. And so, yeah, a nice little fun project. I think it's going to look pretty cool on the board when it's done, to be honest. I think it'll be a really nice little scenic piece. So that's just another update on the coach and the long number of mentions I've already talked about so far on it. But I think it should be pretty cool. All right, well, I hope everybody's week has started off nicely, and I will talk to you later.